Chapter 413. Tanarak glanced back gloomily at Sargon, who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead. He was best at dealing with voodoo warlocks, but it was a pity that he and his daughter had joined forces to ambush him. Mr. E's eyeless face was looking at him with a faint smile. It seemed that he could only go up himself. An alchemist going up against a voodoo warlock was a bit strange, but Tanarak, who looked down on Daddy Midnight, still went up to him. A street thug dared to behave atrociously in the cold flame Vatican? The great alchemist only needed a glance to determine the approximate composition of the poisonous gas. He threw out 2 bottles of solvent, one transparent and one turbid. The 2 bottles of potion mixed in the air and formed a kind of gas with a somewhat fresh fragrance. It directly neutralized Daddy Midnight's poison. Midnight did not back down. He took out a dark brown skeleton the size of a palm and silently chanted a spell. The skeleton expanded with the wind, but from its bone structure, it did not look like a modern human. It's so short. Is this a human skeleton? Death Knell looked at the skeleton that his new partner had thrown out and asked Thea with some doubt. This thing was less than a meter tall. Could it have been a dwarf when it was alive? That should be the skeleton of a Lemurian. Earth's civilization was slightly older than Atlantis. To the current Earth's people, it's a prehistoric civilization. Thea was also quite interested. She did not expect Daddy Midnight to have such a good thing. The Lemurians were divided into the giant race and the dwarf race. This skeleton was unsurprisingly from the dwarf race. It was a natural-born psionic ability user. However, one's special ability was directly linked to one's bloodline. It had been dead for hundreds of thousands of years, so it wasn't a simple matter to rely on this skeleton to display its remaining value. Daddy Midnight had already thought about this problem. He gave the skeleton a small tambourine drum. The dark brown skeleton slowly hit the tambourine drum. Psionic shock, invisible to the naked eye, was intermittently emitted in front of him. The alchemist's willpower attribute was not high. He was beaten back by the psionic shock. At the critical moment, Mr. E, who practiced 18 meditation techniques a day, stepped forward. His hands emitted waves of ripples and blocked Daddy Midnight's attack. As for whether or not he wanted to leave Thea and Poison Ivy, who he couldn't see through, to his companions, no one knew. The great alchemist had been made a fool of by a voodoo warlock that he looked down on, and he felt unsatisfied. He no longer held back and kept hitting the ground. Following the rumbling sounds of heavy objects, 2 heavy steel statues ran out of the backyard, their huge bodies quickly appearing in front of them. Kill them! The great alchemist pointed at the mercenaries. Thea was a little surprised. These spellcasters from Earth really did have some good stuff. Midnight skeleton from the prehistoric civilization, this guy's steel golem, these were all extremely valuable things. It would be too much of a pity to let everyone blow it up. Sia winked at Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy's eyes instantly turned emerald green. A large number of vines suddenly sprang out from the bottom of the steel golem's feet. Under the influence of Poison Ivy's chlorophyll, the vines grew at a heaven-defying speed. The vines that could only wrap around the golem in less than 10 seconds had already slowed down the golem's footsteps. The golem's strength was infinite, and it rushed forward tirelessly. The vines that were as thick as a child's arm were pulled apart by the huge force. One vine was torn apart, and in the blink of an eye, 2 more vines were wrapped around it. 2 vines were torn apart, and 5 or 6 vines were wrapped around it again. In less than 30 seconds, the 2 steel golems were still struggling with all their might. However, under the entanglement of a large number of vines, they could no longer move forward. Seeing this scene, Mystery shrunk his neck and pulled the battlefield between himself and Daddy Midnight to the side. The great alchemist also noticed that something was wrong at this time. He took out a handful of powder from his body and threw it at Poison Ivy and Thea's position. Hiding the head but showing the tail, "Come out!" The powder was clearly scattered, but it defied the laws of physics. It was thrown dozens of meters away, and only dispersed when it was 5 meters in front of Thea. Poison Ivy waved her hand, and a green wall made entirely of plants appeared in the middle of the fissure, blocking all the powder outside. "Play with them." Thea changed into a black robe, covering herself from head to toe. She reached out and cancelled the invisibility spell on the two. Except for Mr. E, who had already noticed it, the other three took a deep breath. Poison ivy sat on a huge, colorful man-eating flower. This flower was at least 3 meters tall, and its roots and branches were at least 10 meters when fully spread out. Was there such a huge plant on Earth? Facing a powerful enemy, Sargon and his daughter, who had temporarily made peace, looked at the great alchemist. He was involved in the most diverse subjects and had the most knowledge. The great alchemist Tanarak shook his head. This thing did not seem to grow in nature. Mages like them could often summon some strange species. A huge plant did not surprise them. What made them confused was that they could not see through poison ivy's essence. Was this woman alive or dead? If she was alive, the circulation in her body was completely different from that of humans. If she was dead, she could breathe, and there was no aura of death on her body. Instead, there was a bright and dazzling aura of life. Like Mr. E, the three of them regarded poison ivy as some kind of summoned life form from the outer world. As for the summoner, who else could it be? Naturally, it was Miss Thea, who was dressed like a necromancer, beside her. Poison ivy's body was full of vitality, but there was no magic power, so they were only afraid. But Thea and the others were dumbfounded. This person's magic power was too profound. The nose ring girl who had just started learning magic and Tanarak, who had always been studying alchemy and rarely accumulated magic power, only felt that it was powerful. Apart from Thea, the strongest great mage, Sargon, felt it much more deeply than they did. Pure, thick, profound, and vast were not enough to describe this magic power. Sargon could not understand where this divine being came from. Out of curiosity, he used a secret spell to see Thea's inner essence. He was the oldest and had seen too much and experienced too much. Even if the other party was an angel who had descended to the mortal world, he would not be surprised. But he did not see the scene he had imagined at all. It was as if he was standing alone in the void. Up, down, left, right, front, and back, it was pitch black. He subconsciously looked down, and as his gaze fell, the void became darker and darker until it absorbed his gaze. He could no longer see anything. Only the mental power that he had cultivated for many years told him that he was looking at the abyss, and the abyss was looking at him. If he still wanted to see the sun tomorrow, he had better come out quickly. He did not know that this was the psychic shield that Thea had learned from the Martian hunter. The yellow energy of fear enveloped the soul. He had been ambushed by his daughter and betrayed by his best friend. His willpower attribute had dropped to the bottom. Looking at Thea's magic reaction from afar was actually fine, but he had courted death and wanted to see the inner essence. As a result, he had bumped into the psychic shield and the magically modified mind labyrinth. All kinds of illusions appeared one after another. Spellcasters who had been tortured to death by him, demons from hell, monsters from the abyss, nightmares in the space mezzanine, and countless species that he had seen before or never seen appeared around him. His mental power was exhausted until it was exhausted. His vision was filled with endless emptiness, and he could no longer perceive the outside world. Chapter 4:14. Addicted to Thea's mind labyrinth, the Archmage, who was comparable to Zatanna's father, had his mental strength completely depleted. His mind was completely still, and his breathing was getting weaker and weaker. Finally, his legs stretched out, his neck tilted, and he revealed a strange smile. He was dead. F***CK. The two guys who had known him for half their lives and his daughter were dumbfounded. You died because of a disagreement? Have you considered that we're still fighting? Are you playing with us? Do you still want the unity of Squad 7? Where's your team spirit? If they knew that their powerful companion had died just because he took a second look at someone in the crowd, they would be even more horrified. Mr. E, who was originally evenly matched with Midnight's father, was knocked back. He had to cast 2 spells in a row to recover from his disadvantage. Old thing, give me your magic power. Old thing, say something. Come hit me. The girl with the nose ring shook her father's body back and forth like a madwoman, as if she could shake the magic out of his body. Unfortunately, The death of a man was like an extinguished lamp. The magic in Sargon's body was like a prisoner who had broken free from his shackles, dissipating in all directions. Ah! The girl with the nose ring could naturally see this scene. Like an injured beast, she roared at the sky. "Stop roaring! Fight the enemy with me!" Tanarak was going crazy. What kind of useless teammates were they? The strongest archmage had died inexplicably, and now they were reduced to a support like him carrying the heavy burden. The situation was extremely bad. Although the girl with the nose ring was a newcomer, she could at least provide some help. He stared nervously at Thea. Death Knell and Poison Ivy were waiting for orders. The mercenaries were using a rain of bullets to deplete the number of smoke monsters and cultists. The battle outside was very lively, but the center of the field was a little quiet. What was Thea doing at this time? Thea was busy sorting out the gift bags. This unlucky archmage was the second humanoid gift bag she had encountered in her life. The previous Martian manhunter had also failed due to fear, but at least it required Thea to collect all kinds of knowledge on her own. This archmage had delivered himself to her doorstep. His mental power was destroyed by all kinds of illusions, and a large amount of memories were intercepted by Thea. First, Thea was puzzled. Where did these things come from? It wasn't until the old man breathed his last that she understood. The soul that carried the memories dissipated, and the old man left everything he had learned in his life to Thea. In terms of function, it was far less powerful than the Martian hunter of the past, but it was a professional match. A large number of applications of spells, secret arts, tricks, and rituals were all completely obtained by Thea. "You guys go ahead. Leave that blind man in the suit. You can kill the rest." Thea was constantly sorting out her gains. From the old man's memories, she knew that Mr. E was in charge of all external affairs. She could just ask him about Malcolm. The others did not have any powerful means, and Poison Ivy and Death Knell were more than enough to deal with them. Sargon had a lot of memories. The old man had lived for more than 90 years, and he was the oldest of the four. He had been to many places in the world before his death and learned many spells. He could also cast the irony spell that Thea had been a little envious of, but he was not very good at it. Sargon's unique spell was gem magic. He could use a special method to seal spells into gems, and when he used them, he could cast them by chanting a certain word. It was very similar to the spell scrolls in the game. He had accumulated a lot of magic gems, and when he threw them out in a fight, not many people could withstand it. The old man's attacks were sharp, Zatara's irony magic defense was amazing, Mr. E was in charge of scouting, and Tanarak the alchemist was in charge of making some magical tools and deciphering traps. When the four of them were at their most intimate, it could be said that they were the strongest mage team in the world. Unfortunately, no matter how deep their friendship was, it could not withstand the baptism of time. Zatara's death caused a rift between the four of them, and this rift grew bigger and bigger. Today, Tanarak and Sargon's daughter directly led half of the followers to betray them, ambushing and seriously injuring Sargon. At this point in time in the original timeline, their plan was very successful. Sargon's daughter seized her father's magic, and Mr. E directly admitted defeat. The Cold Flame Vatican could be said to have not suffered any damage. However, Thea's miraculous appearance completely changed the situation. Sargon's gaze accidentally killed himself. Without his magic, the girl with the nose ring became a useless woman, and the situation deteriorated to the point where it could not be any worse. After carefully analyzing the situation from old man Sargon's memories, Sia could not help but sigh. Their arrival was too coincidental. If they were 10 minutes earlier, they would still be fine, but if they were 10 minutes later, the girl with the nose ring would inherit the old man's magic and magic gemstones. Could this be the luck attribute of Merlin's sword? Thea felt the sword around her neck that was used as a necklace, and thought with some uncertainty. However, from the fact that this human gift bag had automatically sent itself to her door for her to study, she was indeed lucky. Thea glanced at the situation. Death Knell did not let Poison Ivy help, and was fighting Tanarak alone. The alchemist, who did not take him seriously at first, was stunned by Death Knell's magic-piercing bullets. He had no choice but to take out his own alchemy items to resist. Death Knell's grenade launcher had been magically modified by Thea, and now the bullets were all high-speed armor-piercing bullets with magic-piercing arrays. Thea did not have the time to make them one by one. She made one bullet, and then directly used the artificial intelligence to repeatedly scan the array carvings. She then used modern machinery to dig it out bit by bit. With the fully automatic equipment, she could only produce a few rounds a day. The machinery faithfully simulated her carvings. The magic-piercing bullets had less spiritual energy than the ones she made, but it was more convenient. Now, these bullets were all in Death Knell's hands. He had also injected himself with the super gene optimization fluid that Thea had concocted, and his body's attributes were increasing rapidly. He was clearly a burly man like a bear, but now his body was as light as an eagle. He surrounded Tanarak and slashed left and right. From time to time, the invisible arm behind him would control the gun to shoot various bullets at his magic shield. Alchemists were not known for their powerful magic, but he was a support staff. His combat experience was worlds apart from Death Knell's. Without a magic shield, he was just a mortal body. Death Knell's machete was so fast that it left afterimages. He did not think that he could withstand it with his 50 kilograms of weight. The alchemy items in his hands were being consumed rapidly. He was so anxious that he was sweating profusely, but he could not find a way to break out of this situation. Poison Ivy giggled as she looked at the battlefield. Her personality was not very belligerent. When no one paid attention to her, she would play by herself. That's right, she was playing. Her charm pheromones spurted out, and from time to time, she would bewitch a few cultists to swing their machetes at her former companions. She was having a lot of fun.